Hello and welcome to PEP, Passion, Empowerment, and Perseverance. I'm your host, Graham Salinger, President and founder of Salinger Coaching Solutions. And today is a special Mother's Day edition of PEP. I'm joined by my mother, the woman who is usually behind the camera. Today, we're going to put her in front of the camera. Leanne is a retired multimedia producer who started off working for the first in-house video production group at SONY in New York and moved on to establish her own video production company and eventually established a long career producing videos used as professional development tools for educators through her work with the University of Chicago Schools Mathematics Project and at the Center for Urban School Improvement, and later in New Leaders for New Schools out of New York. Most recently, she oversaw the production of professional development videos, online courses, and print materials as Director of Content Production for Apple Tree Institute, an educational innovator in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the program, Mom, and happy Mother's Day.
Why, thank you.
All right. So one of the things we both have in common in terms of professionally is that as a coach, storytelling is important to me. And as I'm sure as a multimedia person, storytelling is important to you as well. You know, long career telling different types of stories. So I just read your bio, but I want people to know more about you and your story. So can you tell our viewers your career path and tell us about the story of your career in video production and editing? Can you just explain that to my viewers?
Sure. So to really tell my story, I have to go back a little bit more than what was included in the bio that you read, to first start with telling about how I was really fortunate to have the experience of living in Tokyo, Japan during my high school years. And then once I graduated from high school and came back to the United States to study at the university, I decided to major in Japanese language and literature because my experience there had been such a positive one. And I wanted to continue with the interest that I had in Japan. So then once I finished my master's degree, I moved to New York and I got a job as a bilingual assistant in the Sony Corporation's broadcast department. So in that job, I had a lot of fun taking Japanese engineers around to all the major broadcast networks and production companies that were using Sony equipment because they were interested in doing R&D on their products. So that seeing that the kind of work in those environments really got me excited about the video production process. So, and then just coincidentally, that year was I believe it was the 25th anniversary of Sony's work in the United States. And so they were sponsoring an in-house contest, which you could, write essays or do videos or do something that would highlight sort of Sony's position in the United States and the value of their products and them as an employer. So I teamed up with some of my other coworkers, and we decided we were going to produce a videotape about Sony products around the city. So we went to lots of different locations and interviewed people and made this videotape that kind of highlighted, Sony products in the city. And we were lucky enough to win first prize. So then that happened to lead to my ability to get a job. They were just setting up an in-house production group. And so I was able to talk my way into being one of the first members of that in-house production group. And that really opened up all the possibilities for learning, getting hands-on experience and learning how to use, all this sophisticated equipment that I wouldn't have had an opportunity to do if I had been just, out going to a production house and trying to get a job. So Sony was a great lead in to that career. So it really set me up for my career later on.
So how did you transition from that towards leading Sony and building your career?
Say it again. What do you mean?
Yeah, how did you transition from working at Sony to then gaining that experience, sort of on the job training, and then starting your own career in multimedia?
So I learned on the job at Sony, and they then at a certain point, they moved from their New York headquarters out to New Jersey. And I wasn't really interested in the commute back and forth. I had learned a lot, but I didn't want to spend hours on the road going out to the the corporate headquarters now. And I love being in New York so much. So that's when I decided to go freelance, and was working based on what I had learned at Sony and the context that I had. I was able to go freelance and support myself in New York.
And that was way before like Sony as we know it, right? I mean, that wasn't like when they were making movies and TV shows and all of that kind of stuff. Were they just starting to do that when you were there?
Right. Well, they weren't in the movie business yet. To give you an idea of when this was, I remember videotaping the first press conference announcing the Walkman. So that was a while ago.
Yeah, fair enough.
And in fact, my boss at the time did go on to start, the beginnings of the movie thing, where they were getting into video, like videos for home, like a Blockbuster and that kind of thing. They were starting to get into buying and distributing those kind of materials. But that was different from the work I was doing.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So it was an unusual career trajectory, going from having your expertise in Japanese language, working from Sony, and then moving on to really sort of taking the reins and doing video stuff yourself. So what are some important lessons you learned along the way? And off of that, what advice would you give to people on not following a traditional career path?
Right. Well, so if I had done the traditional kind of path that I was on, after my master's, I would have gone on and pursued a PhD, and that would have probably led to the possibility of an academic career. But after my master's degree, I realized that I really wasn't interested in an academic career. I'm a visual person, and this was, that my degree would have been in Japanese language and literature, which was something I was interested in for a while, but it wasn't what was going to sustain me throughout my career, I didn't think. So I decided to change gears, and rather than take the path of least resistance and go into a PhD program, because that's kind of the path I was on, I decided to change gears and move to New York and see what kind of opportunities there were for someone with my language skills. And that's how I ended up at Sony. So the lesson that I learned from that was, don't continue in a direction if it doesn't feel like it's a fit. Just because you've invested all this time and energy into something, that's not enough reason to keep doing it if you have your doubts about whether it's really the thing for you to do for the rest of your life. So it was like a first lesson. Then probably, a second lesson was tied up with this the competition that I entered at Sony, where don't listen to this inner voice you may have that tells you, oh, you can't do that, that you don't have those skills, don't even try. Just because you don't have those skills doesn't mean you can't accomplish that. So, if you want to do something, you can teach yourself the skills that you need to do it if you want to do it bad enough. So that was kind of a second lesson. And although I'd always had an interest in still photography, I really knew nothing about video production when I entered the contest. So, what I didn't know didn't hurt me. I didn't know what I didn't know, actually. And so I kind of naively went into it and learned, kind of the hard way in the process. But it was really quite a fun thing to have accomplished. Another lesson that I learned, not just at Sony, but every job I've been in, is really to take advantage of all the on-job training and learning that you can. If there's anything that's available, especially in this day and age of technology where it changes so much, keep on top of it and take all the opportunity you can to pick up those new skills. What I studied in college was completely different from what I learned at Sony, and I was able to get a wide range of experience from pitching ideas and writing scripts and shooting and editing videos that really prepared me for the rest of my career. And probably one of the last lessons I can share is that when I went freelance, I continued to produce, corporate promotional videos, but I also worked as an editor of arts related videos and music videos, just as MTV was getting started. So, music videos were just beginning at that time. So, I had always had an interest in art, and I love being able to combine this interest with work that I got paid for. So, a lesson from that is, take the time to really reflect on what are your interests, what do you have an aptitude or a passion for, and then be intentional about kind of seeking out work opportunities that incorporate those interests, if you can do that. Yeah.
And when you're doing freelance, like um, how did you go about like finding clients? Can you talk about like the actual, because that's like another thing. It wasn't just that you were doing videos, then you also had to like be entrepreneurial. I mean, those are like two different switches at the same time, right? Both the video content, but also finding people. Can you talk about what that looked like for you?
Yeah, well, again, I was very fortunate because I had made some great contacts and had some really close working relationships with people at Sony. And many of them had branched out at the same time to do, start their own businesses or start their own, do other work. And because of their knowledge of what I had done at Sony, if somebody asked them, hey, do you know somebody who could edit this, or we need somebody to do that, they would send them my way. So it's contacts, contacts, contacts. And I think that's the same today, if not even more so. I think it's probably a little bit easier now because we've got things like LinkedIn and young people are very good at networking, which was not quite the biggest thing when I was coming up. So, yeah, I think that it's building those relationships, and of course having a body of work that you've earned the respect from your colleagues for, and that you've documented, and you have work product that you could be proud of and that would showcase your talents. Then that worked for me. I really didn't have to go out and hustle up that much. I was very lucky that things came to me kind of when I needed them, and I just lucked into a lot of things. So serendipity was a big part of my career too. So
Fair enough. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about we've talked about sort of your work life, but in general, what sort of life experiences prepared you for your career?
so during the time I was freelancing, your dad and I got married, and we had you and your sister. So freelancing was really just the situation, because I could bring enough income to keep up with my clients, but I really could set my own schedule, which was very important to me because I wanted to have enough time to spend, on family things. Then, by the time we left New York and moved to Chicago, you and Kala were, already in preschool, and I had more time to devote to work, but I had no client base in Chicago. So I had to kind of start from scratch. And this is one of those serendipity things where I happened to read in your school newsletter that the director of the school and the person who ended up being your preschool teacher had just gotten a grant to produce a tape about effective techniques for teaching mathematics to young children in preschool classroom. So I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And just to get my foot in the door in Chicago, I'll go and see if they need my help. So I contacted them. I volunteered to help with the project. And as luck would have it, the producer that they had been working with had to stop working with them for medical reasons. But they had already paid him and had no product to show. So they were sort of desperately in need of someone who would pick up the project and run with it. So I got to do that. And it was a great experience. And that tape ended up becoming award-winning and earned scholarships for kids at the school. So by the sales, and I think it's even still available, in certain libraries for educators to learn from. So so having that, it was just a great experience, and having a good work portfolio and a demo reel that showcased, your ability to take something from start to finish, um, was was a was a real positive thing that got me in the door there.
Was I in that video? I think I remember something about me riding a bike.
Oh no, that was later. That was so the work that grew out of that one tape. The University of Chicago has a very famous project, the University of Chicago School Mathematics Project. They had developed a very effective high school curriculum for teaching algebra and other mathematics to high schoolers, but then also they were beginning to develop a curriculum for elementary schools. And it's in fact one of the most highly used curriculum in schools even today, everyday mathematics. And when the head writer and developer of that curriculum saw my tape that I had done with, or the tape that I had done with the director and the lab school, he said, that's exactly what I want for all my professional development. So that led to, probably 6 years of working with them to develop materials that would help teachers learn how. It was a very rigorous program, and it was teaching mathematics in a way that teachers had never either experienced themselves or had learned how to teach that way. So it was an intense kind of teacher preparation to do it well. And so in video examples of great teachers implementing that curriculum were really needed. And that I launched into that, and that took me for several years in a project. And that was in one of those tapes that you were riding a bicycle to demonstrate. I forget what the lesson was, but there was something about kids would time you, and it was like a kind of a project-based mathematics problem for them to solve.
Yeah, so we're also talking about other life experiences that informed your career transition.
Right. Well, a little bit, separated from my actual work, but something that was very, close to home was both my mother and my aunts were educators, and both my parents had pursued education very successfully, advanced education very successfully, to kind of transition from being dairy farmers to a successful educator and international marketing that my father did. So that, that having observed the importance of education and lived the importance of education in my family really helped me kind of transition into, it felt natural to kind of pick the educational field as an area to really focus on.
Awesome. Yeah, so you're talking about sort of the education being really important in your family background, and that being the sort of ethos in terms of things that you did video production, multimedia production around. So at Salinger Coaching Solutions, we talk about unlocking people's passions, perseverance, and purpose. So what would you say drove your passion and purpose throughout your career as you found yourself moving through different ways of doing video production in the education field?
Yeah, well, it changed and morphed throughout my career, but early on when I was just starting in video production, it was really kind of a pass, or it was like a career that you could open doors that you wouldn't normally have access to, or you'd find yourself. I was interviewing Namjoon Pike for one videotape for SONY. And if you don't know who Namjoon Pike is, he was a pioneering video artist. So, if I hadn't been a video producer, I would never have had opportunities like that. So so early in my career, just, being exposed to new things, new situations, new tools and skills really was very exciting. And having the chance to do that in New York and kind of be able to make it in New York, that was enough to be, that was very fulfilling and enough to be very satisfying. After a while later on in my career, it's like I wanted to do something that might make a little bit more of an impact on the world. And going into the education area really fit that bill. I spent thousands of hours in classrooms with very talented teachers and very devoted teachers. And I just became more and more amazed at the kind of energy and patience and skill it took to be a really inspiring teacher. And so anything, I became very dedicated to doing whatever I could to make their very, very difficult job, more fulfilling and easier and more satisfying for them. So that really became my passion and my purpose in my work life.
Yeah, can you talk about can you contextualize the videos you made in terms of how they were used for teachers? Like how did those videos work in professional development? How were those used for teachers? And when you're at new leaders, how did that, what was the relationship between sort of the thing you produced and the, the work that it brought to teachers and their experience as educators?
Right. Well, teachers are very they live very isolated lives most of the time professionally. So they're in their classrooms. They don't get much exposure to other practices, and the professional development they've traditionally gotten has been sort of a kind of one size fits all, just kind of go and get a few tips, and it never really takes, or it doesn't have any lasting effect. So the kind of professional development materials I was making were more like case studies, where you would really document what effective teachers were doing in the classroom, down to how do they position themselves when they're talking to children? What words do they use? Just all of these different, almost intuitive approaches that teachers have to connecting with kids. And you can capture that on video, and you can slow it down, and you can look at it again, and you can analyze it. And teachers love to see other people and how they handled situations, or how they handled a certain lesson. And they just they absorb so much for it from watching others who are successful, that they really appreciate it, the opportunity to do that. And with video you can do it sort of on your own time. It's not you have to go to a conference and sit there and that's it. So
Is that a widely, and maybe it changed throughout sort of the life of your career and you saw it develop, but is using video as a professional development tool something that's widely utilized within schools or within school districts?
yeah, I think it's been used quite a lot more, partly because technology wise it's easier and there's more access, but the approach has also just been more, I think, accessible for teachers. They're not being told, here is the one way you should do this. They're asked to be reflective, to look at other people's practice, maybe even videotape yourself and reflect on, how are you reacting with kids? Are there things that you don't even realize you're doing that maybe or may not be effective? So yeah, I think that's changed. And as a coach, it's also been a very effective tool for training coaches. Lots of schools, for a number of years now, have been funded to have a classroom-based coaches for teachers. And a lot of them would be teachers who were just master teachers, and they suddenly were elevated to being coaches. And it does take a whole different set of skills to teach adults and adult learners, than it does to be an effective teacher of young children. So videotape, one of the projects that I worked on was really to provide real life case studies of teachers and coaches. And coaches would then use the videotape of a teacher because a lot of the work of a coach is to first go in and observe, a teaching practice, and then figure out what's the best strategy for helping that teacher advance to the next level. So being able to prepare a coach by having them look at lots of different teachers with lots of different needs through the videotape, and then role play, how to approach them as a coach and how to help them as a coach, has been, I think, an area of growth for a lot of school districts too.
Got it. Yeah, so we're going to kind of jump backwards in the timeline. But you mentioned you're sort of freelance and having your own video production company. So in the spirits of Mother's Day, what was it like taking on that venture, while at the same time, owning your own business, running your own business, and also taking care of my sister and I?
Yeah. Well, being a freelancer is a little bit different from like owning a business. I wasn't, locked into, I had to be somewhere, like a small business owner has to be at the store, or has to have staff at the store or something like that. So it was a little bit different. It was not quite as demanding as, having a business like that. But the really great thing about being a freelancer was that you did have some flexibility with your time. You were able to pick and choose the projects that you wanted to take. And again, I was lucky enough to have sort of, when both you and Calla were small, one client that could kind of sustain me with a steady, set of work every month. And that was enough to get us by. And then I was also fortunate that I had a friend who had a child about the same age as Calla, and she wanted to stay home. And so I was able to work out a deal with the person that I was working for. He would pay the childcare for her, for Calla to stay with her. So it was, it's always a challenge, and I don't know that it's gotten that much easier for young mothers now because of the situation with childcare. Hopefully very soon it will start to become not quite such a challenge. But, so my advice is that for other working mothers, and I'm sure they all know this already, but it's really crucial to build a support network, with other self-employed parents that you can work out some timeshare or something with childcare, and in emergencies come up and stuff like that, that you have to really have a good support network with you if you don't have family nearby. Another thing is, I think you need to really take a hard look at, how much can I work and how much do I really need to work? And because you can always, pick it up when you have more opportunity or more flexibility to pick up the work. But you can't really pick up where you didn't have enough attention given to your family. And so if at all possible, it's hard to compartmentalize things, but when you're with your kids, try to be full on with them, because that's your most important job.
I'm glad that was the experience.
Well, and I think that I can proudly say that I think that your dad and I did a very good job with you and Calla. We're so fortunate that both of you are happy and healthy and leading productive lives. And it wasn't certainly all of what we did, but we did our best.
Good. Yeah. You sort of talked about as a parent what you hope your mark was on Calla and I. Career-wise, what mark do you hope you had on others? Yeah, so I was just asking what your mark is on others, what you hope your career mark was on other people.
Well, the biggest one I hope is that I have in some way contributed to the growth and sense of professionalism that all the teachers that I either videotaped and came in contact with, or those that have watched and will continue to watch the products that we've made, and that in turn I hope will have had a lasting effect on the lives of children, their learning and well-being. That's the main thing. But I've also worked pretty hard at being careful to hire and promote people who I think were really talented. And I would kind of went out of my way to encourage them, just as a lesson that I had learned, to pick up on every opportunity to learn on the job, seek out job supported learning and career advancement opportunities. I sort of gained a reputation as being a stickler for high quality of the productions and the materials that people were producing. Sometimes they would groan about it, but because I would, I wouldn't let little things slide. But I hope that was something, a value that I've instilled in the people that have worked for me, because if you don't continuously produce high quality or the highest quality product that you can, it will come back to haunt you. So that's one thing I hope I've instilled in the people that I've worked with.
All right. And now the final question. Now that you've been retired for a little bit, although you're retired during a weird time because you retired and then COVID happened immediately. But yeah, what's been fueling you now that you're retired?
Yeah, well, I retired in January of last year. And I think, things really started heating up in about February. So a lot of plans, travel plans were canceled and things like that. But I had lots of other projects that I was just waiting to get started with. I've talked about how I've always had a creative side and I've always been interested in art, but I never really had the time or opportunity to kind of pursue them in any serious manner. I dabbled in things, but never had the time to really focus on it. So I'm really loving painting. I had done a lot of some charcoal and pastel work just for fun in the past, and I still continue to do pastel, but I'm really loving oil painting, and I am taking classes and serving on the board of an arts advocacy group. And I am making all kinds of new colleagues and friends, and they're very supportive of each other. So that's been very exciting. And Maryland is one of those places that if you're over 65, you can take classes at their universities and community colleges for just the course fee. So that's been fun. I'm just now taking a history of jazz class, and next semester I'm going to take a music theory course, which was going to be exciting. It's a picking up on, I played the piano and played clarinet when I was a kid, but it didn't really have an impact on me. But now it's like, oh, and now I can go back and kind of pick up on and learn about those things. So
is that your next artistic adventure, is music?
Maybe, I don't know. When I was in Japan, I played the shakuhachi, the bamboo flute. But unfortunately my flute cracked, and so I haven't been able to play it for a long time. But yeah, I've always thought if I could come back in another life, I'd like to be a musician. So in the meantime, I can try and, learn, things that will help me appreciate in a deeper way the music I listen to, or introduce me to new music and things like that. So yeah, that's been fun. And of course, the timing also worked out that shortly after I retired, our first grandbaby arrived. So that's been something that's been a big passion in my life. So it's so wonderful to be a grandmother. It's even better than, I think, maybe in some cases, even better than being a mom, because you don't have the same sort of daily worries and burdens and things pulling on your time and attention. The time that we can spend with Marin is just a sheer delight. We just could sit and watch her for hours, puttering around. So that's been great.
Cool. Yeah, I see some of your artwork behind you.
Yes.
Do you want to plug? I know you just started your own art website.
Yeah, well, that was another instance of teaching myself something. I had years ago taken an HTML class, and I thought, oh God, this is too complicated. I'd never be able to create a website. But now technology has advanced so much that you've got, things that are kind of very intuitive about using. So I taught myself Squarespace and set up a website that will showcase my work so far, so that if someone is interested in seeing what I've done, they can go to the website.
Cool. All right. You are off the hot seat unless there's anything else you want to add about your life and career.
No, just I'm proud of you for doing these interviews. They've been a really interesting development for you, I think, and keep at it.
All right. Sounds good. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, hon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.